The actions of governors across the country have been put on full display in the quarantine to enforcing face masks and individual state plans on when and how to reopen following all the COVID shutdowns. Now, the American Legislative Exchange Council has released a list detailing how each governor has handled the pandemic, and state budget expert Donna Ardwin and chairman to the Task Force on Economic Revival, Stephen Moore, offer us more insight. Thanks for joining me this morning. Let's get right to it, because here in California, Governor Gavin Newsom, he's definitely been in the hot seat. How is he faring in this particular report?
Well, his ranking overall was 40th out of the 50 governors. So I guess that it got him a 2-star ranking, but he was one away from a 1-star ranking. One more spot and he would have been 1 star.
So how has the handling of the COVID-19 crisis impact the rankings on this?
Well, states have, never before have governors had more authority in terms of their states and business conditions and the fiscal conditions of their state. Gavin Newsom was very quick to shut down things across the state and allow mayors to shut down their cities and their businesses and their schools and their churches. And, you know, you look at what's happened in Los Angeles and look what's happened in San Francisco, and it's just a poor performance. And so, you know, we point to other states like Florida and Georgia and Texas that are where the governors got the highest grades. And those governors were able to keep their citizens safe from this terrible virus, but also keep their businesses open, keeping their parks and schools and open, and that's had a big effect. So we'd like to see, obviously, putting safety first is the most important thing, but you got to protect your businesses, you got to protect your workers, and you've got to make sure that you've got tax revenue so you can pay your bills. California isn't doing that right now.
So tell me about who put together this list. Is ALEC a nonpartisan group?
They are, that's correct. Steve and I were authors of the study. We're not part of the organization, but we put together the list together with Dr. Arthur Laffer and Jonathan Williams from ALEC, and used our collective experiences with governors over decades, as well as the data that we have on those governors, to look at those policies that we know work going into the pandemic and will work coming out of the pandemic. And then Steve took a particular look at the governor's economic handling of the pandemic. We also looked at their fiscal response. As Steve said, you know, you need to have an economy moving to pay your bills, and if not, you need to handle your budget situation without going to Congress for a bailout, because not only is it not fair to other states, but it's also just kicking the can down the road. And as you know, California is facing a significant budget deficit of magnitude, you know, of $50–60 billion, depending on where we are coming out of the crisis. So we urge governors to look at what other governors are doing, including getting their fiscal houses in order, and as Steve said, opening up their economies, as well as pursuing some of these pro-growth fiscal policies that successful states are following coming out of the pandemic.
I would just add one thing, that if you look at our ratings, and people can go look at them at alec.com, what you find is that there are many Democratic governors that did pretty well, including one of the top Democratic performers was Jared Polis, who's in Colorado. And some of the poorest performers were, for example, the governor of West Virginia, who's a Republican. So it's not partisan, but it is based on policy. And look, California needs improvement. You're facing a real fiscal crisis and a health crisis at the same time, and a small business crisis in the state. And there are much better ways of handling that. And I hope that Gavin Newsom reads this report.
All right. Well, I want to thank the both of you for chiming in and giving us some insight. If you'd like to access this list and read recent articles, you can go to alec.org.